think whenever you're able to express sad emotions, if you're able to express them eloquently, I think you make them very, very meaningful. And I think that's really the trick. The trick is having enough power. And you can get this power through a lot of practice, trial and errors, where you have understood the nature of sorrow, how it comes about, what it does, how it impacts you. And then you write about it, or you talk about it, or you paint it, or you music it. But you have to be able to express it, and that makes it meaningful. You know, there is this, I think she's from Bosnia, if I'm not mistaken. She's a daughter of an immigrant. Anyway, she's this great pianist. She plays classical piano, and you know, sometimes when she plays, her facial expression, there is this sadness. And personally, I enjoy watching that. This is a woman who feels the sadness and yet is able to express it on the piano so eloquently. You know, and you don't really know what to watch. If you should watch her face, or you should listen to the piano, or if you should look at the way she moves her fingers on the board, because they're all so intoxicating. You know, it's kind of when you love someone and they're far away and you write poetry. I mean, it's filled with sorrow and sadness, longing and yearning. These really intense desires that they've just broken your heart. And yet, if you have a poetic nature to you, you sit and you write a poem, and it becomes quite healing. You can't do anything if there is poverty without having the power to express poverty eloquently and meaningfully. You know, it's interesting when they capture a shooter who has killed like 19, 20 people, and they happen to be 18 or 19. Once captured, they take him to a cell and they have a conversation with this person. And then he begins to tell you about his life story. His father was a drunk. His mother was absent. People around his own age would push him around, bully him. Or I don't know if you have watched any of the Johnny Depp and Amir Heard trial, especially when Johnny Depp was on the stand, kind of telling us who his father was, who his mother was, you know, how much abuse they endured. You know, the only difference between a mass shooter and Johnny Depp is that he had the power of having good looks. He had the power of having the right connections. Because of his looks and connections, he was able to do some commercials and then some movies. And when you look at the movies that he plays, he's very eccentric. The mass shooter was never really trained to express the abuse he suffered. And so violence became his companion. You know, if you're sitting home and you're alone and you feel that life is tough and your back is beginning to break, and then you have 2, 3, 4, 5-hour conversation, and all of a sudden you realize that the clouds are slowly moving away and you feel lighter, and that's what happens. You begin to talk about your sorrow, your estrangement, in a very meaningful way. It's an intentional conversation. You know, it's not random, it's not accidental. You're going to talk to this person about a specific thing, and that sadness all of a sudden blossoms into something quite beautiful. In the absence of that, it's just a mess. Until you grow a really, really, really thick skin, where you can just kind of take life's abuse and not say anything. You can handle it. You know, you only suffer pain and aches when you're in a relationship with something, and that relationship has various degrees of attachment. And in attachment, there are emotional histories involved. And then in every attachment, there is a certain value that you inject, and you see yourself in that value. And when things don't go according to your expectation, then you begin to throw temper tantrums in a variety of shapes and forms. Now, if you were to go back to Daughter of Fire, what happens is this. For Irina, there is only one source of nourishment. They're not 2, they're not 3, they're not 4. There's only one, and that's Bai Sahib. She's physically connected to him, emotionally connected to him, intellectually connected to him, spiritually connected to him. Bai Sahib is Irina's son. When you have that kind of a relationship, that kind of an attachment, it means that you're basically cut off from all the other things that life presents to you. You don't care for them. You only care if he directs you to those things. Otherwise, you don't care. And if you don't care for all the sideshows, then you don't put any values to them. They mean nothing to you. And if they mean nothing, they're irrelevant to you. And if they're irrelevant, they can't harm you, hurt you, disappoint you. You're not interested in them. The only person who can hurt you is by silence. And he can hurt you by simply not looking at you, not listening to you, and not seeing you. He's the only person you care about. Only things you care about that can hurt you and disappoint you. Now, if you have too many things out there to which you're attached, let's say you're attached to John, for example, but you're not really attached to what a relationship is and what it does and how it functions for you. Because if you truly understood the nature of relationships, there's a good chance that you would still be with John. You would just not care as much because you know the function of a relationship. You know, it's like when you drive and someone is like driving a Bentley or a Ferrari, and you say, listen, I just want a car to take me from point A to point B. I don't understand why someone would spend $200,000 in a car, you know, in a place that has so much traffic like San Francisco. There's no reason for that. And so your interest, desire, purchasing a Bentley just disappears. You don't have that desire. And I think it's always nice to invest in one single thing. The problem with that is that sometimes when you invest in one single thing, it turns out to be counterfeit. You know, there is this great Sufi, Hassan al-Basri. As he was walking, there was this old man who almost slipped. And Hassan said, oh, be careful, don't slip. And the old man looks at Hassan and says, Hassan, listen to me. If I slip, only I will fall. If you slip, the entire city will fall because the entire city depends on you. And you could only have one attachment if there is a great amount of love. It really is kind of like the first 2-3 weeks of any new relationships, where you're willing to kind of just empty your bank account because you like to go out and eat, you know, in and out every day, and you watch movies and you quit your job because you want to spend, you know, all of your time with this person. And in some ways you're very, very lucky because 8 billion people on this planet, they just disappear. You don't care for their judgments. You know who you want to be with, you know whose judgment you really care about. The rest disappear. You know, there's a guy in Berkeley, he is homeless. He's this young man, beautiful face, beautiful eyes. And whenever I would run into him in college in Ashby, I would ask him, here's $10, he would say no. And then I kind of got this feeling that, you know, there is something really special about this guy. And so I began by asking him, would you let me buy you a sandwich? He says no. And it's interesting for me because as someone who is homeless, you know, you are homeless, you have no place to rest your head. Why wouldn't you want $10 from someone, buy you a sandwich, get you a room somewhere for a couple of days? And in some ways I think he's very, very lucky because he has no need for people on the outside